Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Brendan from Modern to Me in one of your last Java tutorials. So today we are learning about enumeration. So enumeration, also known as just enum, or enum, is essentially just a way to define constants in Java. So they're a lot like classes. So like if you right-click source and then go to new, you can see that you can create, like right where you click class, 2 down is enum or enum. And so you can click that and create a new enum type. But for our case, we just want to create it right within this class because this is the only scope we're going to be using it in. So we don't need to create a whole new file for it. We're just going to define it right here. So the way you define it is the same as a class. So just type public enum instead of class, and then you type your name. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a character type enum. So we're going to create a couple of constants to represent different kinds of character that your main character could be in a game. So like, you know how you can have a warrior or a magician or an archer. So let's create those. So you just type the name, and then just like a class, you do the curly braces. And now the way you define the constants is you just type the name, and it's good practice to have it be in all capital letters just so you know that you're referring to an enum. So you're going to type the name, and then you type a comma, and really you just kind of define it like you would like in English, like with a list with commas. So like warrior, magician, and archer. So that's how you do it. You don't need another comma at the end or anything. That's all you do. That's how you define the types in your enum. So how do you use this? Well, if you had like a type, remember if you had like a type boolean, let's say you had boolean and it could be like true or false. So you could only set this variable equal to true or false. Those are the only two types you could set it equal, or the only two possible values that this Boolean variable could have. Only these two. And similarly, any enum, like we have our character type, you just type out the name of the enum, by the way, to create an instance of it. And we'll just name it my type. So it's just like a variable. And you can set this equal to either character type dot warrior or character type dot magician or character type dot archer. So you can almost kind of think of these as like, I don't want to say static variables, but you reference them in the way you reference static variables in classes. You type the class name, or in this case the enum name, and then the dot operator, and then the name of the variable, or in our case the name of the constant. So these aren't actually variables, these are just kind of constants to represent these ideas. So let's say like if we had another, let me just kind of type this out in pseudocode. So if we had our, I guess I should go like this, create some space. So we have like, let's say public class like character. So we have our class. So what we'd probably do is we'd probably have an instance variable like probably go private character type, and then like in the constructor character, I guess this would be public character, we'd probably have like in here character type, but this would be private character type like my type. And then like we'd pass this in through the constructor. So we'd have like this, and then we'd set this dot my type equal to my type. So you know, it's really the same, like really very similar to the way you use other variables, but it's just kind of like creating a new variable type with only a certain number of values you can represent it with. So let's kind of take this concept a little more abstractly. So it's cool that we can have these different, you know, constant types, but right now they are, if you think of it, they're really static. Like you can't do much with them other than like, okay, I want to create an archer, so you can set it equal to archer. But you can also have methods and instance variables within these enums set equal to each of these. So like, let me just kind of explain what I mean. So let's say that you want to create like a code to refer to each of these constants with. So like we have int like type code, you could say, and I should probably say like public I'll just go public int type code. And oops, now I need to, what happens is if you start adding, like if you don't have this like public int type code, then this is valid. This is a valid enum definition right here. But once you start adding instance variables like public int type code, so I have an instance variable, all of a sudden you get an error. So once you start adding these variables, what you have to do is you have to have a semicolon at the end of your last definition. And so now you'll see that, okay, it's working now. So you have to have a semicolon at the end of your last one if you decide you want to add instance variables or methods. So if you have an instance variable, each of these types is going to have this variable in it now. So you can see that if we typed like my type, and we have character type.archer. If we type dot again, you'll see that it has type code as an instance variable. So we could reference that hypothetically if we wanted to, this variable. So now all of these variables have this type code instance, but none of them are being defined right now. So what you can do is you can have like an enum constructor of sorts. So what you do is you just type like character type, or public character type, I should say. Public character type. And then in parentheses, you can leave it blank, if you really wanted to, or you can just do a parameter. So in our case, we need a type code for all of these. And then in here, you can set like this, it's the same. It's really similar to classes, like I was saying. So you just type the this keyword dot type code is equal to type code. And so now every time you are creating one of these, you'll see that you can assign a type code to it. But remember, like I was saying, these are constants, so you can't really like dynamically have a different type code for every time. It's almost like a static variable, like I said. Like warriors and magicians and archers are all going to be the same. So you see we're getting an error, and it says the constructor first class dot character type is undefined. That's because you can't like individually call a constructor for each of these constants, or it's not very practicable. So what you want to make sure you do is you have to kind of almost call the constructor right when you define your constant. It's kind of weird. So you can just go, you type the parentheses, you have an opening and a closing parenthesis, and in here you need to pass in the parameters. So like here we'll just go like 0, 1, 2. And so right here, as you can see, like I'm pretty much defining the, you could say, I guess, the constructor right with it. So you can see we're getting an error, and you know what? This has to be private. That's like kind of goes along with what I was saying. This variable has to be private because you can't, like I said, like it's a constant. You really can't be defining things like this that are constants, because since it's a constant, you can't be having it a public, because then everything can access it and everything can change the variable. Now that it's private, only things within this class itself can access it, so you can't like be calling this constructor or accessing this type code variable from other places. So it's just going to work out a lot better having these all be private. Now what you can do though is you can have a getter method. It makes a lot of sense to have a getter method, and so you can do public int like get my code, and then you'll have it return type code. And so now you can access this code to use this program in kind of a more practical sense. So let me show you what I mean. Alright, so something funny you might want to try is now that we've got the java.util.math class imported, we can start to use some random numbers. So let's say that we want to create a character, but we want to kind of challenge the player, and we want their character type to be random. So if you want to create an random integer, so just go int of like math.random times 3. And so now we have a random integer from 0. This is supposed to be java.lang.math. I always mix those up. And so now we have a random integer from 0, 1, and 2. Now, what you can do is there's kind of like a method, I guess you could say. So let's say here. Actually, let me have this. I'm going to create this my type variable, but I'm not going to set it. I'll set it down here. So there's this method, I guess you could say, of this character type enum. And what it is you type dot values. What it does is it returns an array of all of the values in your character type. So it's useful to have these codes to help picture this. So like warrior is the value at 0, magician is the value at 1, and archer is the value at 2. So if you were to go my type 0, you would be able to see that my type would equal warrior, and if we did 1, my type would equal magician. If we did 2, my type would equal archer. Now these type code instance variables that we created, these have absolutely nothing to do with this. Absolutely nothing to do with this. These are just more for reference, and it helps to have kind of like an instance variable to help represent that concept, but it is by no means necessary to have that. You can always reference these as in this kind of array. So if we were to set my type equal to random, we know that, and actually what we could even do is instead of multiplying it by 3, we could go by character type dot, we could do dot values dot length even, and that would multiply it by this is going to multiply it by the length of the array of the values. So essentially we're going to get the integers 0, 1, 2, but if it was like a little longer, then we could get any of the values. So now let's just test this out. We're going to use our switch statement that we learned. This is why we learned switch statements. They're especially useful for enums, really, really useful. So if we switch our my type variable, we'll have case warrior, and for that we're just going to print out, so actually we need to do case character type dot warrior, and we can do system.out.println, and we're going to print out, we'll just print out warrior, and then make sure you have your break. And oops, actually, you know what, you don't need this. Got a little overzealous. You don't need that at all. You just need case warrior, and you're good to go. So we have break, okay, and now what we can do is we'll do the other two, case magician, and we'll do the same thing that we did for warrior. Print out magician, okay, break, and one last one, case archer. It seems like this is a pain, but it's actually so much easier to do this than to do a whole bunch of if statements, and it also makes the code a lot clearer. So all in all, it really is a lot better than just typing out like 4 different if statements. A lot better. Okay, and now we'll just do our default case, and if it's default, we'll just print out that like something went wrong, because we should get one of these 3. So we'll just print out error. Okay, looking good. Alright guys, I think our program's ready to run, so let's run this. We got magician that time, archer, archer again, magician, warrior. So we've gotten all 3, warrior, archer. Oh my gosh guys, it works. It's pretty cool, right? Like you can create a random kind of character, you'll get all 3. We haven't gotten a magician in a while. There we are. So you can get all 3 of all equal probabilities, and it really kind of like creates a challenge for the player. It's just a really cool gameplay mechanic. So not only are you like efficiently creating this code, but it also is a very logical way to represent these objects beyond just classes. Sometimes a class can be excessive. We don't like in this program, obviously, where we weren't about to create a warrior and a magician and an archer class, you know, like all be like subclasses of the parent class character type. No. Wasn't necessary. Not at all. We have our character type, and that's all we needed. So it's pretty cool. That's the concept of an enum. You might want to use it for weapon types. You can create like sword or like sword types, like different kinds of swords, or enemy types is what I found it especially useful for. So if you want to have like I'm just trying to think of enemies, like you have like wolf, so like we'd have like a wolf, and vampires, all different enum constants. Just anything you think you might need to represent with a constant is a great idea to use an enum. This is one of our longer tutorials, but this was our last tutorial. We have another coding exercise to wrap it all together. So good luck on your final coding exercise. I'll see you guys there.